don't miss another update.
Namaste, everyone, and welcome to this 10 p.m. Jeb Dialogue show. And today we have Francois Gautier with us, and you know Francois Gautier. He has been here on Jeb Dialogues, and he's written a new book. Welcome, Francois. How are you?
I'm good. I was in Paris for release of another book in French on Ayurveda. I have written an enormous encyclopedia on Ayurveda. Though I'm no expert, I did a lot of research and then came back to Delhi. I had a few appointments in Delhi, went to Pune to my museum, and just now came to Pondicherry. So I'm good.
So I must congratulate you for the launch of this new book. It's called The Entirely New History of India.
Yes.
So it's a wonderful book, I believe, whatever little I've heard of it. And I hope that this particular book corrects a lot of wrong impressions about Indian history.
It does indeed.
When do we get it in the market?
I think it's available now. I don't think there is an e-book yet, but that the publisher told me that it should come within a few days or a few weeks. But it's available on Amazon.com and also on Garuda Prakashan Books. And it's indeed an entirely new history of India. I wrote it in French firstly, did a lot of research, then got it translated in English. So I'm very happy about it.
So definitely, viewers, this book is worth reading, and I am getting a copy directly from Francois, and we'll be doing a review of this book, a review discussion of this book with Francois Gautier next week. That's
Right.
A promise. So let's come back to the topic today, and that the world against terror. What we have been watching over the years is that the response of the world against this terror, this Islamic terror, basically, because terror is now synonymous with Islamic terror. And if you actually go to these sites which monitor these terror attacks, so 99.9% attacks are Islamic terror attacks. So you could very well say that terror actually means Islamic terror. But we have been having what is called a very, very discordant response from all over the place. So Europe reacts differently, the US reacts differently, within the US, Democrats react differently, the Republicans react differently. You come closer to India, then you find that different parties have different takes, and some of them, in fact, will go to the extent of appeasing the terrorists and go around saying that terror has no religion. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard, that terror has no religion. But of course, terror may not have a religion, but then most of the terrorists seem to come from one particular religion. That is definitely a stark fact that cannot be denied. Since you were in Paris, I don't know whether this attack happened when you were in Paris.
Very much. I was in Nice, actually. I was in Paris, of course, when it happened. It happened in the suburbs of Paris. I was in the center of Paris.
Okay.
But when I was in Nice, it happened in Nice also, that the 3 person had the throat slit. And I was there in Nice at that very time.
Okay, so we did not see this kind of reaction in France, even at the time of the first Charlie Hebdo attack. And this time, this seems to be a much more coordinated response. Then we saw the attack in Austria. That response was also similar to the French response. However, there was an earlier attack in Sweden where the response was quite vacillating. And I think it faltered as a response. Do you think that France has turned the corner? And because France has turned the corner, being the most liberal country in Europe and also the most secular country in the Europe, going by what is called the classical definitions of liberalism and secularism. And if France has turned the corner, Europe has also turned the corner?
No, I don't think so. No, I have believed for a long time that, like Hitler. Hitler is a very good example because when Hitler came to power, a lot of nations thought either they thought, okay, let him be, he's not going to harm us, or he's not such a bad guy. There are some of the things like his anti-communism, which we share, or even there was a lot of anti-Semitism in Europe at that time, like there is now. That the Jews are, bankers and they rob us, etc., etc. So, but slowly the entire world turned against Hitler. It took time. I mean, Americans took a long time. They came later, but ultimately Hitler lost the battle. So I think the same is true of Islam. There are still many countries who say what you're saying now. All religions are the same. It's only a few, misguided people who did this thing. Most of the Muslims are peaceful. And indeed, in France, after the attack, I was there. The imams, the mullahs, of the Grand Mosque of Paris came out and said, the same thing that they say in India always. No, these are, we are a religion of peace, and we totally disagree with this violence. This is horrible. This is terrible. But I know for a fact, because I'm a journalist and I have covered Kashmir. Actually, Kashmir opened my eyes. Is that okay? There were terrorists in Kashmir. There's still terrorists in Kashmir. The guys who wield the guns. But I met also good people. Retired Muslim High Court judges in Srinagar, retired, teachers, university chancellors, and they. When you talk to them, and because you're a Westerner, they think you're a journalist, so you'll be sympathetic, and they all come out saying, "Yeah, no, we belong to Islam. We feel closer to Pakistan." They say, "We don't feel Indians. We don't feel Indians." And yes, we are persecuted, in Palestine, in Chechnya, in Kashmir. So the problem is not with the terrorists, because actually the terrorists, they read the Quran properly. The Quran says, I mean, people should read the Quran. I have not read the entire Quran, but I have read excerpts, and I've seen excerpts, that kafirs, those who, are blasphemous towards the Prophet, have to be killed, and they have to be killed in a ritual manner, decapitated or the street slaughtered, So the terrorists actually are reading the Quran and practicing it. But the problem is that the majority of Muslims who silently endorse it. That is a problem. The biggest problem for me with Islam is that the majority of Muslims, and of course, there are people like Matahir, the ex Prime Minister of Malaysia, who's saying openly what many people think.
Yes,
Quite a
exactly.
few have come out. There was a poet in India, I forgot his name, who also said, no, anybody who
Munawwar
blasts,
Rana.
yeah, that guy. So they're saying openly what many Muslims think. And I know for a fact in France that many Muslims do think that if you say anything in the Prophet, it's all right to be decapitated. So this was fine, in the 7th, 8th, 10th century, 15th century, 16th. The mentalities were different. I think the Quran was written for a period where there were a lot of violence. You have to protect your women. You have to be ruthless toward the enemy. You cannot accept that, your God, is there is blasphemy against your God. But we are in the 21st century, and this is the big problem is that nobody dared ever to adopt the Quran to modern times. Like Christianity, whatever you say about Christianity, not the one that is practiced in India, but the one that is practiced in the West, it is moved, it's evolved, though maybe the scriptures haven't changed, but the people have evolved, they accept Buddhism now, they haven't come to Hinduism yet, but it will come eventually, they can go into my brother is a Protestant, he comes to India, we take him to a temple, he doesn't feel he's committing a sin, he's happily going to the temple. So Christianity has evolved, but Islam hasn't. And this is both the beauty and the curse of Islam, is that Muslims feel, that they're committed to a religion that has very clear boundaries, that give them very clear discipline, that give them a sense of brotherhood. I have experienced myself that there's a brotherhood in Islam which is lacking amongst Hindus. When I traveled from France to Delhi, I traveled by car when I came to India. My best friend was a French Moroccan Muslim, and everywhere you say Allahu Akbar, I mean, in Iran, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, people who open their door, they give us food, they give us the hookah, So there's a brotherhood among Islam, which is so 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 the Muslims today are very united. That's also the problem, that they're very united, whether they're they decapitating people or they silently feeling this is the right thing to do. There is a sense of strength and unity. But as I said, it's a war that Islam cannot win. Islam thinks that it can take on the whole world, but it cannot,
Exactly.
because eventually Sweden will turn also, like France. France has been a long time, you know, like this, no secularism, but they also. But now, France is realizing that this is a real danger. Macron realizes that it's not a few fanatics; that there is an entire section, of French intelligentsia, French, mullahs, French singers, because they're very brilliant people. The Muslim French, they're brilliant people. Some of the best comics, some of the best writers, some of the best philosophers are Muslims today. But they have a commitment to Islam first, not to France. And we've seen the same thing in India. The
Exactly.
first commitment of Muslims in India is towards Islam, not towards India. So this creates a huge problem for a country, that you have an entire section of people who feel that their priority is Islam, and whatever the Quran says is absolutely sacred, and nobody can touch it. So it's a war, and eventually the Chinese will join that war also, because at the moment the Chinese play their own games, and they have this tension with India and with the US, but they also have a huge problem with Muslims. So far they've able to contain it, by putting a huge lead on the problem, but you cannot forever keep a lead and keep, I don't know how many million Muslims in re-education camps and close the mosque. And so eventually, the Chinese will join that war, and Islam will lose that war. This will be the end of Islam. This is what I have felt for many years, because when that war happens, if you're a Muslim, even a good Muslim, you have problem finding a school for your children, you have problem finding a job, you have problem hiring a flat. There will be a suspicion of Muslims. Already there is, if you're a Muslim and you want to become a pilot, I know there is in every airline in the world, there is a suspicion toward Muslim pilots, which may not be unwarranted, but the Egypt within they crashed one plane. Then there was that Malaysian guy who crashed his plane. Nobody ever found how he did it, but for sure he did it. Then there's people who crash their planes on the World Tower. So already it's difficult for a Muslim to become a pilot. There is a suspicion, at least in a foreign airline. So this is a war that Islam is bound to lose, unless Islam accepts to reform its scripture and adapt it to the 21st century, and obliterate all the passages which says, that you kill kafirs. I mean, it's a must today, but I don't see it happening. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see it happening because there's too much of apologia around. And whenever this kind of a thing happens, you said that French Muslims suddenly they come up and they say that we denounce it and we condemn it, and this guy is not a Muslim, and that this is
Yeah,
exactly
this is exactly what
what the
happened.
scriptures teach.
Yes.
And you are nobody to tell, but so-called, what is called a regular Muslim, telling somebody, a scholar of Islam like al-Baghdadi, that he doesn't know the scriptures, and this guy sitting here who's sounding an apology for Islam knows it better.
Yes.
That doesn't make sense. I mean, you see it in India all the time. You see it
Unfortunately,
in India all.
India doesn't have the clear position that France has towards Islam at the moment. Proportionately, India has the same number of Muslims that France has. The France maybe have 15 to 17, 18% Muslim population, and the same is true of India. So people say, no, it's complicated for India, it's more complicated, but I don't think so. It's the same problem, and it needs to be dealt, in a very clear manner. We saw during this, riots in Delhi, and the sittings in Delhi, that there is no difference. There is no difference really. and
Actually,
Kashmir.
not just for India, it should be very much more clear, because India has experienced it for such a long time,
Yes,
and in spite of that
and
experience, they even suffered a partition because of that.
yes,
And before the partition, they saw 30 years of bloodshed and the same philosophy in different words at the most. But it was
absolutely,
the same philosophy. They said that we cannot live together with Hindus. And that's why
absolutely.
we have to move out. And when they moved out, they did not move out in full.
No,
They left a large part here in order to start doing the same thing all over again. And
absolutely.
the silly people here, and not only allowed them to do it all over again, but allowed them to do it in the manner they were doing it before the partition all over again.
Right.
The same guys were absorbed into academia. The same guys who were actually singing songs for Pakistan were absorbed in the Congress party. So they did not seem to have learned their lesson. I think it's only last 5, 6, 7 years that the narrative has started changing.
No, the difference with India is that you can get elected with Muslim votes, which is not the case in France. There are certain, as you know better than me, there are certain states in India like West Bengal and Assam, and and UP, and where Kerala, where you get the Muslim votes, then you get a little bit, you divide the Hindu votes between the Dalits and the upper caste, and you get enough votes to be elected. This is why people like Mamta Banerjee or Uddhav Thackeray, are now pandering to these votes, because they know that the Hindu vote is divided, and so they don't care so much about the Hindu vote, but the Muslim vote is, the Muslim vote together. They have again that brotherhood, that unity, that sense of purpose, that sense of which the Hindus lack. Unfortunately, we see in America how the Hindu vote, the NRI's vote was split, and many of them voted for Joe Biden, which is okay. He might be a very nice man, but definitely his policy toward China and Islamic terrorism and India and Kashmir, will not be the same as Mr. Trump, however unpredictable he was. So the problem is, more with the Hindus than with the Muslims. In France, there's unity. You see, when the Charlie Hebdo happens, and when this decapitation happened of that teacher, who, by the way, didn't draw the cartoon, he just showed the cartoon. It's not that the guy drew the cartoon, and he just showed the cartoon that were drawn by somebody else long ago. And he showed them to his students, and he told, the Muslim students, because he knew there were some Muslim students, that, if you feel offended, please go out of the classroom. And still he was beheaded, and many people have endorsed many Muslims have endorsed his beheading. So the French had a very strong reaction, like they had after the killing of Charlie Hebdo. They came out in the streets, and they showed solidarity. And I don't know how long it lasts, because these things fade, and now the confinement, the problem, the COVID, the economic problems in France. So the French may forget. But what I'm saying is that, like Hitler is again a very good example, because like for Hitler, eventually the whole world turned against Hitler, because the whole world realized who he was. There were a few seers, there were a few, intuitive people, the few knowledgeable people who knew from the beginning. Charles de Gaulle was one, Schwerobindo was another one. From the beginning, who said, Hitler is an asura, he's a dangerous man. He can destroy Europe and destroy the world. So Schwerobindo warned the British very early, and the Indians, and he told Mahatma Gandhi that, we need to ally with the British. The British have been our enemies till now, but we need to ally with them against this man with a danger to humanity. But very few people had this vision. So it took time and bloodshed for the world to understand that Hitler was a great danger, and that the democratic world needed to unite against Hitler. And ultimately, Hitler was defeated. So the same thing, I think, will happen with Islam, unless Islam reforms. And unfortunately, again, there are so many good Muslims. In France, as I said, there are very, very talented, because they're third, fourth generation, fifth generation Muslim France. They've been brought up in France, and they have a lot of talent, and a lot of wit. Some of the best best actors, Muslims today, but they have this faithfulness over the Quran, and especially the older they get, the more conservative they get. The problem with age is that people age and they become conservative. They become like their parents, or they go back to their roots. So when they age, they go back towards Islam, more towards fundamentalism. It is not necessarily taking a gun, doing a jihad, but it's certainly supporting this kind of terrorism that we see today in the world. So nations like Sweden or Norway, or so many nations in the world, UK, and so many intellectuals are still defending. I mean, I have seen in New York Times article when I was in France, more or less excusing the guy who beheaded Samuel Paty, and putting the blame on Samuel Paty. I mean, written by white, white journalists, not Muslim journalists, white journalists. Shocking, shocking. It's like self-destruction, It's like But the same thing was true in Hitler. I mean, my country in France, most of France thought, Hitler is not such a bad guy, And the French
Okay.
willingly gave, yeah. I mean, I remember my grandmother saying, the same thing. Oh, the Germans were not so bad. She was
Okay.
she was a, yeah. Most of France collaborated. I mean, in India it's not so well known, but most of France collaborated with Hitler. You know, uh, Hitler beat the French army, just wiped them off. I mean, they were still in the First World War mentality with horses, and Hitler has got these tanks. He went around them, and then and just so they surrendered. And there was a guy called Marshal Pétain, who was a hero of the First World War. He became the French prime minister, and he collaborated with the Germans. The French handed the French Jews, to the Germans who died in concentration camps. And for a long time, the French thought, Hitler is not such a bad guy. But eventually, as I said, uh, Hitler lost because he couldn't fight the whole world. I mean, including Russia. When he attacked Russia, that was probably his biggest blunder. So Islam will do. I mean, Russia is a very powerful enemy. Also, it's got problem with Islam. It is quieting down in Chechnya, but it'll again burst somewhere else, and the Russian will join that war.
If you look at the international situation today, and also look at the way that alignments are taking place all over the world, and we find the Islamic world itself completely divided. We find the Arab world on one side. The Arab world has actually gone and aligned with Israel. In fact, they had been aligned for a long time. The only thing that they have now made it open and made it formal. And at the same time, the Iran axis and the Turkey axis, that seems to be working at cross purposes with this alignment. And your Tayyip Erdogan seemed to be the new caliph emerging. So, how
No,
does the world,
yeah.
how can the world actually use these fault lines to expedite this process? Because for it to take place naturally will probably be much longer. But this process of the whole world turning against this scourge can be expedited, don't you think?
No, I don't think so. I don't think the Islamic world is divided. Okay, they might make peace with Israel, but you see countries like Qatar, uh, who are now owing half of the world. In France, Qatar was a hotel, football club, spas, studios. Uh, they have no deviation from that hard Sunni, philosophy. I don't think so. And I don't know about the rest. I mean, but I do believe that the Islamic world as a bloc remains the enemy, and Turkey particularly, because Turkey is at the door of Europe. There was actually it is the French who stopped the first invasion uh, uh, Islamic invasion of Europe. There was a guy called Charles Martel. He stopped an army of Muslims in Poitiers a long time ago. I don't remember the exact, but a long time ago, and that stopped Turkey from taking the whole over Europe. They just kept a bit of part of what is now Kosovo, which is the only white Muslim, and maybe Albania, part of Albania, which is now the only really white Muslim part of Europe. But Erdogan has the same ambition that he wants to, and now he's got soldiers, because in Germany, must have 2 million Turks, and Belgium must have 500,000 to 1 million, and so there are some places in Europe where the Turks are very numerous, and we see football stars. I forgot his name, the guy who plays for Arsenal, OG, I think, who is openly pro-Erdogan. So it's going to be a long and bloody battle. I don't think the Arab world is divided. I'm a little skeptical. They might make peace with Israel, but their goal remains that Islam is a true religion. The Prophet, the Muhammad, is the only God. And we need to conquer the world. So the different ways. Some people want to do it more by buying up, things cleverly. Like you see this Al Jazeera television. They've employed some of the best newscaster from Western white newscaster from CNN and BBC. And paid them huge amounts of these guys. Come and they give you a sense of professionalism to Al Jazeera, which is basically cleverly, basically a propaganda for Islam. So I don't think it's going to be a long and bloody battle. It's going to be a long and bloody battle, and I think most of the Muslim world for the moment is more or less united, openly, covertly. Of course, you have countries like Turkey who are, militant. You have Iran, which is a very dangerous country, though very cultured people. I remember crossing Iran, very cultured people, but very dangerous and very ruthless people. So long and bloody battle. It's going to be a long and dangerous battle. I mean, Samuel Paty, was unlucky, but it can happen to anybody. I mean, if you say anything against Islam, and I've been speaking against Islam since I covered Kashmir in the 90s, and I saw that what a religion can do, because people now say Kashmir, human rights, this and that, but the Kashmiris, Muslim, the Valley of Kashmir, because people are very confused about Kashmir. The Valley of Kashmir Muslims started a war against India in the name of Islam. I mean,
I know.
I was there. I was there.
I think
I was there.
the regular media has whitewashed that event. I think
I was
you
there.
put it absolutely
I
right.
saw it. I saw the Kashmiri Hindus, the Kashmiri Pandits were done not no harm. They've been living there for generations, they said, oh, your brother and sisters, Muslim, they go to their house for festivals, this and that. But in a few weeks, Benazir Bhutto said, Azad Kashmir 2-3 times, and the mullahs in the mosque in the valley said, Hindus convert or die, and they all left. I was there. So I saw that what a religion can do, in the name of its monotheism, in the name of its supremacy, in the 20th century. I mean, it wasn't there to the 21st century, but it's still going on now. And now the Kashmiris are posing as martyrs, but they started a war in the name of Islam against the Indian government, who had never done anything to them. I mean, nobody's perfect, but I used to go to Kashmir, and I didn't see any, particular atrocities against the Muslims there. And they were, I remember Sri Aurobindo wrote, in 100 years ago, he said there were 1 million Hindus in Kashmir in the beginning of the 20th century. Soon there'll be none the way it is going. And he was right. There are none left in the Valley of Kashmir. So it's going to be a long war. It's going to be a long and bloody war, mainly because the world wants to remain blind, doesn't want to see the truth. Out of fear, I think. I think, Islam is a very, very very fierce religion. As we can see, it can kill. It can. I mean, now it still decapitates, but what it did to the world, the way it conquered Africa, the way it conquered, the way it went to India, the genocide, the biggest genocide in the world is that of the Hindus and the Buddhists. But the Buddhists today don't want to talk about it, and the Jains, and the Christians. So the biggest genocide ever in the world is that of Hindus in India, and so people are scared of it. I think unconscious fear. We see it in India that you can ban crackers. You can speak against Hindus. You can ban whatever you want. The Hindus won't say anything, but nobody dares to say anything about Muslim because people know, including journalists, that they go down the street, burn their newspapers, burn their house, and kill them eventually. So everybody keep quiet. They talk about firecrackers, but they never say anything about the millions of innocent animals which are slaughtered every year in the name of the prophet and turning the streets red. We've seen in the monsoon how the streets turn red with the blood of animals. So people are scared also. So other people are scared or they're stupid and blind. So it will take time for people like the French did. That guy was decapitated, and I saw a photo of his head. It was taken off Twitter, but someone sent me a photo of his head. He was decapitated very neatly. This guy must have learned how to do it, or someone taught him, because he was very neatly decapitated. It was not messy, just his head. People should see that. I mean, Twitter and Facebook and all these people, who are politically correct, they should have left it, because people should see that. It may open people's eyes, because it's all secondhand. Oh, okay, this happened. We all love peace. We'll put some flowers, and the mullahs will say, we're against this, we're against violence. Everybody goes back to the same, till the next atrocity. So for Sweden, Norway, people like that to open their eyes, it will take a lot of bloodshed.
Oh, yeah, you are right. You mentioned about unless Islam reforms itself. Oh, okay. Before I ask that question, let me request my viewers. So, if you have any questions to ask Francois, please start shooting them, because after this question, we are going to the question answer round. And also, please do share, subscribe, and like the video, and press the bell icon. And yes, of course, your contributions keep us going. So please be mindful of that as well. So, Francois, you mentioned about unless Islam reforms itself. What exactly you have in mind? What are the areas, say, if you are given the job of reforming Islam, what would you do? One, two, three.
See, it has to come from Saudi Arabia. It has to come from the Mecca. It has to come from the higher authority, in Islam, uh, and have a concave, like the popes. The Christians have this concave from that. All the bishops assemble with the Pope, and they do look at reforming. They do look at problems like the marriages of priests and etc. etc. So there has to be a concave called by the highest authority in Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I'm not an authority, but the Grand Mufti of the Mecca, and call different scholars from different countries and sit and look at the Quran, and see what are the passages that need to be deleted or softened, or I don't know. I'm not an expert again, but unless the Quran is changed, people will still stick to what is said in the Quran. And it was written long ago. It was again, it was fine for these times. It probably was wonderful for this time, but not anymore. It's not anymore relevant to the 21st century. We need a world where we accept each other, not where we say that my God is the only one. The Christians still believe that, though it is melting slowly. But Islam believes it to the point of enforcing it with, if necessary, with violence. At the moment, it's enforcing it by sending immigrants and populating the whole world and reproducing faster than the countries where they're given refuge. And this problem of refugees is a real big problem for Europe. It's a real. I mean, Europeans are good-hearted. They have a complex inferiority complex because of colonization. You know, many European countries, they colonized including France, of course, very ruthlessly, exploited. The British, of course, we know how they bled India, but the French did in Africa, in Morocco, in Tunisia, in Algeria. So there's a sentiment of guilt, that we've done that. So let us be lenient. Let us, welcome refugees. Let us, but it's misplaced because these refugees have no qualms about their religion. Okay, they might be happy to have a better place, and then, but ultimately, as I said, their faithfulness goes first to Islam, especially when they age. Especially when they age, and of course, they're indoctrinated very early. We know many of my friends. Muslim friends, my wife's Muslim friends, that the children are taught the Quran very early. The mullahs come to the house, and teach the boy and the girl, about the scripture. So Muslims have that faithfulness to the religion which Hindu lack. Hindus just want to be modern and westernized, and emigrate to America and go to send their children to the best school. But Muslims remain faithful to their religion. But unfortunately, their religion is, 8th century written. It belongs to a different time, different epoch, different period. But we have to recognize these qualities. In Islam, one of brotherhood, one of unity, and one of one-pointedness. My God is the only true one, and I'm going to impose it on the world. So, but it is a great danger. I mean, I was doing another talk. I've done so many webinars now that I was doing another talk recently, and someone asked me if Islam was a greater danger than China. I said yes. Of course, China is a great danger to India because it's very ruthless. It's very intelligent. It doesn't have the goodiness of Indians. And it has grabbed territory in the Himalayas for sure during the summer and reinforced its position. But ultimately, the values of China also, they're also a very civilized nation, ancient nation, and somewhere they meet the West and they meet India in some areas. One of them is against Islam, that they both have problem with the Muslim minorities. So I think Islam is a greater danger to India than China, for sure, and to the world. Much greater danger and much bigger enemy, much more ruthless enemy. So it's I mean, people say Asura is a strong word, but definitely it's an Asuric danger. It's a danger that can do a lot of harm to humanity, and that humanity needs to fight united. Humanity needs to unite against this danger, and for the good of the entire world. So maybe Islam will convert. Who knows? I mean, I'm skeptical because I saw the Arab Spring and the entire media went gaga over the Arab Spring, but the Arab Spring turned out that more fundamentalist than the rest. They evicted people who were more liberal. you know, and and installed much more radical regime. So I'm skeptical, but why not? Why not? At some point, Islam may feel that I don't know, but at the moment I don't see it. I see that it'll go on. There'll be incidents of people being stabbed and cars running over people, and people being decapitated here and there in Europe, and so that people get woken up. Europe has to wake up because Europe is in danger. India is a strong nation. There are still, nearly 800 million Hindus there, and there are Sikhs, and there are, but Europe is a
Okay.
weaker nation.
point is well taken. Uh, I think we can move into the question answer round now.
Yeah.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Okay, the questions will appear on the screen. I'll also read them out. Age of 5. We know Islamic narrative and Western narrative is to pursue technological progress. What should be Bharatiya Hindu narrative? How do we communicate it?
See, as I said, the Muslims are united. The narrative of Hindus should be, let us unite and let us go down in the streets. You know, we we see that at the moment there is a government which has been elected by the central government, which has been elected probably by 97% Hindu votes and 3% others, Muslims and Christians and others. But the Hindu voice is not heard. The Hindus are imprisoned. We see that Republic guy, Arnab Goswami, being imprisoned on false things. We see uh, the ban on Diwali crackers. We see how all the temples' money is being siphoned by, governments which are basically anti-Hindu. So the Hindu voice needs to be heard, and for that, Hindus have to go down the street. We don't say that they should do it violently like Islam, but they have to make their voices heard. And at the moment, it is not heard, and they keep crying, saying that, oh, but the media hates us, and the government bans this and ban that, but it's because their voice is not heard. They elect a government, and then the government forgets about them, whether it's local government, whether it's central government. So Hindus that need to go down the streets, and manifest their anger. After all, it's one of the most tolerant and uh, religion in the world. I mean, it's a spirituality that accept that God is many, and they accept every God, Christ and Mohammed, and every God. So you can't say that Hindu is a fundamentalist, but the Hindu voice is not heard. So the narrative of the Hindu is, let our voice be heard. Social media is not enough. We see that it is there in the social media, but it makes no difference. It is still the mainstream media that makes the narrative. We see it in America. It is CNN, New York Times. All these medias who hated Mr. Trump, who made the narrative and made people vote against Mr. Trump. And the same thing is true in India. It is not what the social media says. It is what the mainstream media says, and that influences even the prime minister. Mainstream media says, "Oh, now COVID, there are million COVID. We should, it puts pressure on governments. What NDTV, the Times of India, which is a huge, huge lie. Paid journalism, a little bit of Bollywood, a little bit of cricket, a little bit of gossip, a little bit of politics. So they influence, not the social media. So the Hindu narrative is to get its voice heard in a united manner, and for that it has to go down the street. That is my
Okay.
message.
Next question, Taran Pangatil. A very long question. I think you can take some part of it. What is your views on Islamo-leftism, Islamo-liberalism, Islamo-secularism, and Islam democracy? I think you can please give
See,
a short answer by combining all of them.
no, I mean, if you're young, it's okay to be leftist. I mean, when I was a kid, when I was a student, there was these barricades in Paris. There was a revolution in Paris, and everybody was, pro Mao Zedong or pro leftist. So it's okay when you're young. It's fine. It's fashionable. It's fashionable to be pro left, but when you're an intellectual, when you're a journalist, when your word or what you say or what you write or what you pronounce, is going to influence millions of people, you have a responsibility about truth. It's nothing about Islamofascism. It's about truth. The world is about truth. And if you're a journalist, if you're a writer, if you're someone who's well known, uh, you need to speak the truth, not be fashionable. Because it's like hating Mr. Trump was fashionable. I know my sister in Paris or my sister-in-law in Delhi, they hated Mr. Trump with such a violence without really any, logics or any foundation, to justify that blind, violent hate. So this is just because they are repeating what they have read in the press. They are repeating what Ramachandra Gua or some other, people have said, New York Times, or so this is not first-hand, opinion. It's a second, third, fourth hand. So again, it's okay to be leftist if you're young and to be, but after that you have a responsibility, especially if you're someone in power. So in India, all this Islamo-leftism and Islamo-liberalism, it's crap. It's just crap. It's just either fear of Islam or fashionable, but not based on truth. What is the truth? If I'm a journalist, I'm reporting in Kashmir, I have to see what I see. I have to report it as truthfully as possible. But journalists are forgotten today.
Quite right. Next question. Subramaniam Kuruganti. Are we fighting a lost battle too late in India?
I know a great guru whom I'm very, very fond of, and who's been always a great support in my life. He's not my guru because my guru was the mother of Pondicherry, Sri Aurobindo's companion, whom I met, a few years before she died. So she became my guru. But he's my living guru, Sri Ravi Shankar. And once I was with him in Benares. And Benares is a wonderful city, but also I don't know now. It's supposed to have been cleaned up, but it was very dirty. And so very quietly he said, no, people say it with passion and bitterness. He said it very quietly in a very impersonal way. He said, India is a hopeless country. I don't think he ever repeated that, but that day he said that, very quietly and without any sentiment, And he said, India is a hopeless country. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel it's a lost battle, but, in the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita, you fight your battle and, you leave the results to whoever, to God or fate or destiny, but we need to fight. I'm a fighter and I think it's important to fight, but sometimes it does look like a lost battle.
Okay, so Nath. Muslims say since Quran is word of Allah, it cannot be reformed, so they may be against reforms in spite of assuming Arab authorities go for a reform.
So you have answered your own question. What do you want me to say?
I'll just add to this is that though they might say that it is the word of Allah cannot be changed, but it has been changed many times in the past. And if you go back to the Arab history, and look at the fight that happened between the Mutazilites and the Asharites, and the whole battle was about the interpretation, because Mutazilites had one interpretation and the Asharites created their own interpretation by either, I don't know whether they manufactured it or whether they got it correctly, but that entire Sharia, that is the Hadith and the what is called Sirat, they all came out of the fight. So that's okay. That's said, but that said, that is a power statement. Don't take it as a factual statement.
Okay.
Next one. Vibhuti Jha. Okay, Vibhuti ji, welcome here. There are good people in every faith. We needn't talk about good people in a specific faith. The real question is why the entire world is bending backwards to appease and pander to Muslims.
No, this is a good question, actually. And the problem with Islam is not the people. The Muslims are like everybody. I mean, if you take away the religion, there are good people, bad people, intelligent. They're like everybody in the world. The problem is with the Quran. The problem is with the scripture. So yes, there are good people. There are good people in Islam, no doubt. And myself, sometimes I have been brought to shame, by going to some house in Kashmir and they offer me all kind of things, or having my motorcycle repaired in a Muslim workshop and the guy is so nice and so kind and so precise and so clean. So the problem is not the people in Islam. The problem is the Quran. I mean, this is so the world is banking backwards because the world is scared or blind. I think at the moment more blind than scared, but scared. In India, definitely scared. The appeasement towards Muslims in India is scared, and also for votes, because the Muslim votes in India is starting to weigh a lot, because they are multiplied much more than Hindus and Christians, who have 2-3 children maximum per couple. So the Muslims, that is a big problem. That's a big problem in India, the appeasement to Muslim for the votes. And we see the Shiv Sena in Maharashtra, they've lost the Hindu votes. I mean, I don't think that Hindus are going to vote for the Shiv Sena again. Maybe some very fanatic Shiv Senaite, but the Muslim they'll vote. The Muslim will vote for them next time. So they think that they'll get elected again, which I doubt.
They will not be. They will be wiped out. Take it from me.
Mm.
Amit Galagali, who or what will propel Saudi Arabia to reform? How many more people need to die before the world realizes, or is it the end game?
No, I think we've answered this question many times. There is a war going on. People. There was that famous guy Samuel Huntington who said a clash of civilizations. Yeah, it is a clash of civilizations. And one civilization that lived in the Middle Age, again, good people and intelligent people and smart people, but with the scripture in the Middle Age, and then you have a world that's coming more and more into conflict with that civilization. So yes, it is a war of civilizations, and more it will become open. But what to do? We need to play our part and be conscious of what is happening. It's important, as I said, to be conscious of there's a war going on, and we need to be conscious of it. At least be conscious of it.
Okay, next. Vidya, Biden, Islam, religion of peace, a cause for concern.
No, we should give Biden a chance. I mean, I know a lot of things have been said about him, that he is a leftist, that he's pro-Islamic, that there are many, Pakistani advisors in his team. Let's give him a chance. Anyway, he's elected, so there's nothing we can do much about it. India will have to live with it. I'm sure Mr. Modi will congratulate him as soon as he's officially become president of the United States. So let's give it a chance. I always thought that, especially with China, that he will not be tough like Trump over China. Whatever you say about the United States, or whether it was Roosevelt or Trump or Obama, the United States always came to the help of the democratic world when it was in danger. Always, always. Whether it was First World War, whether it was Second World War, whether it is now against China, whether it is against the Islamic world, So the United States remain a beacon of democracy and liberty for the world.
Okay, next one. Varun Jain, minority appeasement has been a standard feature of Indian states since independence. Has it been cause of Indian politics, where Congress saw a vote bank, or was it because of interference by foreign states? Okay, I have a long take on this. You can read that in my upcoming book, and that is called Unbreaking India. And okay, Francois, your take.
No, I think it was not simple for Nehru, whatever his faults. He had a majority of Muslims who many chose to stay back in India instead of migrating to Pakistan. So he was he played an appeasement game, thinking that the whole thing about secularism was he thought that would be the way to please everybody and to appease everybody, and to have a kind of Indian nation where everybody could find its place and not feel. But of course, it turned out to be a disaster. The Nehru years, India is still paying for it. Maybe the vote bank came later. I don't think Nehru thought at that time that Muslim votes will get my party elected. It must have come later. But yes, today it is the vote. It is the appeasement is very much part of the vote bank. Very much. sometimes openly. I think Mamata Banerjee openly appeases the Muslim people and encourages Bangladesh infiltration because it will give her votes. But again, it's a fault of the Hindus. The Hindus' vote is divided. So Hindus are to blame, not Muslims.
Okay, next one. Subramanyam again. Need for political incorrect far right political party. Okay, let me take this question first. Yes, need for a far right political party will not win the elections. But yes, it is important because then it keeps the center right political party honest. That is my take.
No, I don't know. I mean, no, I'm against the far right, label that people clamp on Hindus and on me. Far right is a Western label that applies to Western politics. Hindu is a very ancient nation. India is a very ancient nation. It's got its own psyche. It's got its own tradition. So I'm always offended, when people are calling me far right, Frenchman, or because it's got nothing to do. I'm a defender of Hindus because I think that they're wonderful people and the very ancient spirituality, and there is many. There's a great knowledge in Hinduism. So to call people far right, I know Mr. Modi has been called a fascist, a far right. This is crap. It's a Western label that the West wants to impose upon India. So I wouldn't say a far right party. I would say a nationalist party. Nationalist party would be the right, an Indian Nationalist Party, a party that has India at heart. I think Mr. Modi is a nationalist. Unfortunately, he functions in a system which is created by the Congress and which, binds it's a shackles for functioning.
Okay, next one. Sandeep. Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. Thank you, Sandeep. Is there a way both of your recent published books can be given as a Diwali bumper offer with your autographs? Well, my book is not yet out. It will be out only after Diwali. So it will
Sure,
not be a
I'll
Diwali
tell,
offer.
I'll tell my publisher. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. I'll tell my publisher.
Yes, 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 yes. Uh, Maybe I can tag on later. Shivam Goyal, can we have two book reviews at the same time? An entirely new year's history of India and Unbreaking India at the same time.
Why not?
Let me ask Sankrant Sanu if that is possible. I think
Why not?
the review that we are planning next week, we could have the publisher thrown in and do
Yeah,
that together.
you will tell him, right?
Yeah, I'll tell him. I'll tell him. Ravi Verma. So most Indian youngsters don't like on negative things of Quran, but they are ready to talk about negatives of Hindu religion. Is this the main reason we are unable to unite other young Hindus?
Yeah, the problem is education. The problem is that, I mean, I'm repeating a million times, so I'm saying it for a million and one time, is that the education that India provides has no roots in Indianness. You're not taught about your Indian heroes, heroines, about the great poets, about Kalidasa, about the Mahabharata. You're not taught pranayama, you're not taught meditation, you're not taught hatha yoga. All these things that are gone to the West now, and the West is adopting. So, and even after 8 years, 7, 8 years of Hindu government elected by Hindus, it is not happening. So yes, I would say again, like Shushi told me once, India is a hopeless country, hopeless, because these tools are adopted in the West. The West knows that Hatha Yoga, I mean, every Hollywood star practices Hatha Yoga, pranayama now is practiced in the West. They know that meditation is good for the mind, good for the body, de-stresses, everything. But it's not taught in India. What can we say? I mean, Shankaracharya is, one of the greatest philosophers. Kalidasa, one of the greatest poets. Sri Aurobindo, greatest philosopher. Not taught in India. What can you say? So yeah, it looks hopeless at the moment, but we need to keep on fighting.
Yes, 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 yes. The fighting is the essence of our karma and our dharma. That is what the Bhagavad Gita teaches. So stick to the Bhagavad Gita's lessons. So that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you so much, Francois. And okay, the one last minute question has come up. Sir, unrelated topic, but I saw your tweet once that Manusmriti has to be revised every 3 generations. I couldn't find any material indicating it. Okay, so what you do is, this question is to me, uh, because this is my statement. What you do is that you wait until Tuesday, and you can ask that question to Shri Bharat Gupta, who is coming on the show on Tuesday, 10 p.m., to talk on Manusmriti. That has been a long-standing request from many of you. So finally, a scholar is coming to talk about Manuskriti on Jaipur Dialogues on Tuesday. So please throw these questions to him. That would be wonderful. So thank you very much, Francois, once again, and thank you very much, viewers. Please do write. Please do subscribe, share, like, and press the bell icon, and keep showering your blessings on us the way you've been doing. And once again, Francois, thank you. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.